Welcome to 6 Feet in the Six. I'm your host, Jeff Barrett with Business Interiors. Thank you for joining us today. The purpose of this interview series is for the close-knit Toronto commercial real estate industry to share ideas and best practice in order to help everyone get back to the office safely and efficiently. We'll be interviewing leaders from commercial real estate, project management, interior design, commercial end users, and product manufacturers. Joining us today is Charlie Musgrave, Senior Director, Office Leasing and Investments for Ivanhoé, Cambridge. Charlie, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Can you tell the viewers a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I am the Senior Director of Office Leasing and Investments within the development team of Ivanhoé, Cambridge. I, in particular, oversee our leasing efforts on our new development portfolio across North America, with a particular interest in the conceptualization of the office building, the occupant experience, and obviously the lease up of our projects. I am the father of two. We have a third baby on the way this November, which is pretty exciting. So that's been keeping us on our toes, my wife and I. And with the work from home experience, it's been a challenging one, but one that it's felt like a lifetime. But one that I think I've really sort of cherished in that it's been some phenomenal time with my family. So not all bad, but looking for silver linings, I guess, right now.
So Charlie, personally, how are you managing?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I'm managing well. The family's been staying well. We've been spending a little bit of time up with my parents in cottage country, and everyone is well and getting along. So that's been good. So
your work from home experience has been quite nice up in cottage country?
Yeah, it's back and forth, certainly in the city on occasion. I'm proud to say I was downtown last week for a client lunch. And for me, it really, hit home how much I miss the downtown experience. So the work from home experience has been good, has been okay, and not ideal, but one you just roll with the punches and adapt. But I am certainly very excited to return to the office at the appropriate time.
I'm very jealous that you had a client lunch. I mean, those are the types of things that I miss the most about my job is, you and I are with clients often, right? And now we're all stuck on Zoom instead.
Yeah. I've had 3 client lunches just in the last month or so, and it's been great. It really has been to reconnect with our clients, really the brokerage community here in Toronto, and but changes. Just in terms of how you greet people and the conversation, obviously, around the pandemic. But it was really nice to reconnect with old friends and colleagues and clients. So,
is there one thing under isolation that you've had to do that you've never had to do before?
Well, we're wearing a mask, naturally. We are being very vigilant about our hand health and touching of the face, and teaching our children to be vigilant in that regard as well. I'm not an anxious person, but I'll touch on it quickly. I remember in April going to Costco, and I had gloves, I had long sleeve t-shirt on, I had a mask on, and I just was on edge the whole time. And it was really a kind of a depressing feeling, but one that, I do feel like we've made a lot of progress and just educating ourselves. And so it's that anxiety, I think, has subsided for me slightly, but we're still on our toes and being vigilant.
So Charlie, in a new segment, we take a deep dive on our guest LinkedIn accounts and look for posts that need more context. So after a quick scan, I noticed that one project was getting a lot of attention on your feed, and that's CIBC Square. You've been celebrating some very large, recognizable tenants moving into that building, and this is a development that's changing the Toronto skyline. So it's really cool, and it's also a gorgeous building as we've all watched it go up. So would you mind just giving us some background about the project and your involvement and kind of how's it going now?
Oh, I'd love to. Thank you. Yeah, CIBC Square is a 3 million square foot urban office campus. CIBC obviously as our anchor tenant that's pre-committed today to about 1.6 million feet, so just over 50% of the entire complex. 81 Bay is phase one. That's the project that you've probably seen as you drive along the Gardiner or visit downtown, or as you said, visit LinkedIn or Twitter. There's a lot of exposure for the project, and it really is. It's a phenomenal building. It's a beautiful architecture using a diagrid pattern. Wilkinson Eyre being our design architects there. Adamson and Associates being our executive architect. The project, what I like to say is that every aspect of this development takes into account the importance of human capital. Human capital being the employees that are going to be working within the complex. So from our world-class architecture to the base building infrastructure, the amenities, the brand image and identity that's available to every and any tenant that occupies space within the complex, all comes together into a compelling value proposition that we believe leads to employee attraction and retention and ultimately productivity. So, what I like to say is my job is to convince prospective tenants, prospective users, occupiers, that they individually and collectively as a corporation will be more productive in our building than they are in their current location. It really is raising the bar in terms of office real estate in the Toronto market. What I'll say is we today are focused on health and safety. So that is one thing that, in terms of how my life has changed and how our efforts have changed in a COVID world, is we believe that health and safety has really, risen to the top of occupier requirements. So focusing on that experience within our building for tenants and prospective tenants.
Can you show us what face mask you've been rocking?
Sure. Yeah, I've got it right here. This is my my denim face mask, which goes very well with my Canadian tuxedo. So I can.
Where'd you get that made?
My mom bought it for me, actually. I don't know where I got it made.
I find those ones that go over the ears. I got big floppy ears, so that always like pushes them forward. So I go for like a head strap one.
Oh, do you? Yeah, that's fair.
You have that long flowing hair. Maybe it covers it.
Yeah, it's been a while since I cut it.
Can you tell me about your book of business and how it's been affected by COVID-19?
Sure, Jeff. So as I said, I oversee our office leasing efforts across North America. We have 4 projects that I sort of spend the majority of my time on, being one in Toronto, CIBC Square, as you know. We actually have 650,000 feet or so left to lease for phase 2. So phase 1 that we discussed prior is fully leased. We may have a small chunk of space available that we'll start marketing soon. But phase 2, we have about 650,000 feet of high-rise space. What I'd say to that in terms of activity is it exists. Certainly there's initial inquiries. It's certainly not proceeding at the same velocity that in terms of just inquiries and interest pre-COVID. But as I mentioned earlier, we do believe that our building is positioned very well for a post-COVID world. Really, and I'll speak to it over time here in this conversation, but the magnetic office experience, we do believe that these buildings that we're building across North America really are magnetic in that users, employees would elect, if given the choice, which, I think they will be given the choice. There's going to be a lot more flexible work from home policies going forward, but when given the choice, more often than not, a user will choose to work in our buildings because of various features that exist. I mean, transit-oriented is one that's sort of under question right now, but I feel in the long term will still prove valuable. The amenitization of an office building, security and health and safety, as we discussed. So food and beverage, really just engaging the user within the built environment from 8 to 5. throughout the entire day. So yeah, we also have a project in Houston, Texas, called Texas Tower. It's a 1.1 million square foot building in the CBD of Houston, and we are about 40% pre-leased there. So we have some more leasing to do. I think overall, just to answer your question, leasing activity has stalled. I think it is a wait and see attitude that I feel a lot of our users are taking, a lot of our clients, and so time will tell. But again, I do feel because of the occupant experience and the base building infrastructure in combination that we are creating in these new developments, I think that we are very well positioned for successful leasing activity in the future.
You mentioned this concept of a magnetic office. That sounds really interesting. Could you unpack what that means?
Yeah, sure, Jeff. Thanks for asking. I think if you're looking to describe the magnetic office theory, at least the way that I interpret it, is we've been working from home for 5 months now, and some of us have found that it's relatively manageable. Others maybe not. Others maybe prefer it and have no intentions of returning to the office. There's certain tasks that I'm very comfortable doing at home, at my dining room table, or from my iPhone while out with the kids on a walk, for example. There are other more creative tasks that I'm completely handcuffed, that would be impossible for me to do from my iPhone, and that are proving very difficult for me to do at my dining room table at home. So the magnetic office for me is really focused on those creative, more challenging tasks, but it's ultimately an office experience that is available and that draws the occupants to the office. So we can all choose to work from home if we so choose, but your productivity, or at least I can speak personally, my productivity is certainly hampered to a degree when trying to do challenging and more creative tasks. So the magnetic office, in my mind, is an experience that enables productivity. I talked about it earlier, the experience around food and beverage, around health and wellness, the natural light that is emitted into a space, the air that you breathe in an office building will have an impact on productivity. So the magnetic office, as health and safety moves to the forefront of the building owner agenda, that is going to implant a certain sense of comfort and trust, I think, that exists between the landlord and the tenant. All said, the magnetic office creates an experience that allows our tenant partners to effectively develop and nurture talent.
I love that term. I mean, if you think about pre-COVID, it was about creating great places to work, but guess what? People had to be there. So, we're kind of, now it's about, all right, we need a great place to work, but we also need to attract people to the office, because now we're going to be giving people choice, right? So the office has to be to a level that is more desirable to work from than your home.
That's exactly it.
Now that we have that choice. So I love that. And I know a building like CIBC Square is just going to be over the top gorgeous, and that alone will want to draw people there. But from a business perspective, having all of those other features, I think is going to be hugely important. So that's awesome that that's a philosophy you guys are embracing. So Charlie, you mentioned you still have some space left in your phase 2 of CIBC Square, but you already have some amazing tenants going into that building. Obviously, some of the most reputable companies in Canada. Could you talk about maybe some of the demographics of the building and maybe some of the future tenants you're hoping to attract?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Jeff. It's something that's certainly a point of pride for us at Ivanhoé Cambridge and Hines, the co-owners of the project. 81 Bay, we managed to attract, obviously CIBC is an anchor for both towers, but Boston Consulting Group, Microsoft, AGF, Business Development Bank of Canada, Oterra, Birch Hill, equities. We've got a blue chip roster of tenants at 81 Bay Street, and one again that we're very proud of. And for 141 Bay, we have CIBC for a baseline commitment that occupies the low rise and mid low rise, and leaves us with about 650,000 feet of space still to lease at 141 Bay. 141 Bay delivers in the third quarter of 2024. And what we have there really is high-rise space. So the mid, high, and high-rise floors. What I think this is some of the most phenomenal space available certainly today in the Toronto market, and maybe even across the country and most of the continent. So our leasing efforts continue on that vacant space, and the prospects are sort of playing a wait and see game, which I think is the prudent and appropriate approach in the world today. But we are looking to replicate the success that we had at 81 Bay by attracting a similar roster of blue chip companies for the balance of the space at the Phase 2 project, 141 Bay Street.
Well, if you're ever struggling to find a tenant, I know Business Interiors is not a blue chip company, but Daniel Martindale, my boss, would be the one you want to talk to. And building sounds pretty cool. I'd love to move there.
All right, I'll give him a call.
So Charlie, on each show we review a product. Sometimes it's a new product, and sometimes it's an old product that has recently gained some relevancy. Today we're going to look at virtual reality software being used to facilitate tours of space. During the lockdown, some business did need to continue. Leases were still ending, spaces needed to be reviewed, and for my business, people still needed to evaluate furniture. So we weren't able to meet in person. A lot of organizations turned to a variety of VR technology to help facilitate this activity. This technology is nothing new. Landlords in particular have been using this type of service to be able to market a space more effectively to a potential tenant in another market. Someone like you, Charlie, who likes to build skyscrapers, probably needed a way to market these buildings pre-construction, and I'm sure you've used a variety of different tools over the years. And there's a lot of different types out there. Some software is solely dependent on renderings to be completed first, like from a program like AutoCAD. Others can be a mixture of AutoCAD, but you can also take photos to be dropped into the rendering to show what a view out a window may look like. If you want a more realistic image than a rendering, programs like iGuide have been used in residential real estate marketing for a long time. This is where we use a 360-degree camera that we place in the middle of the room, and it will capture the entire room in one shot. Or what looks like one shot, but it's probably more like 1,000 shots pieced together. So Charlie, since you and I both do tours, you in your buildings and me in our showrooms, I thought this would be an interesting one for us to discuss. But just broad strokes, what's your experience with this type of software? How have you been using it? Are you using it more these days than before? What can you tell us?
Yeah, okay. So when I think of VR, I think of putting on goggles and standing in a space, where with your goggles, kind of, a large kind of clunky goggle, and looking around at what an interior aesthetic could look like on an office floor. I guess what I'd say to you is we use elements of VR. So, at 141 Bay Street right now, 141 Bay is, we're going to start construction on that later this year, early next year. And so we have, Revit models, and what we do, which is an architectural tool, as you probably know. And we kind of build out the trophy areas of the building and then bring them to life through through VR. But it's more for the spatial aesthetic than it is as a leasing tool. I think it probably should be a leasing tool. What I think gets me is if I'm sitting in our marketing suite in a boardroom with the executives of a company and asking them to put on goggles or glasses or something that on their face, especially in a COVID world, or slightly post-COVID, I think will be a challenge. But what we do from a marketing perspective on leasing is we will create really phenomenal renderings. So that's one thing I'm really proud of in our marketing efforts is we create budgets that allow us to spend up on the renderings. So renderings now, and I think you said it, but the term escapes me, is that 360 kind of panorama view. And so, for example, at our Texas Tower project in downtown Houston, even on the website, you can go onto the website and be positioned in the ground floor lobby but with your mouse, you can do a full 360 view. You can see the ceiling, obviously the finishes, the location of food and beverage and concierge desks and elevators, and really get a sense of the space. But again, maybe I'm misinformed on VR in that maybe you don't need goggles to utilize VR as a proper sales tool.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a catch-all phrase for a lot of visualization tools. So what about during COVID? Maybe not you yourself, but has Ivanhoé kind of been using more of these during that time when we couldn't show space? Or was it too small of a blip to worry about?
It's been a bit of a blip. And as I said, the inquiries, the leasing inquiries that I'm receiving certainly have slowed. I mean, it's not dead, but it's slowed. But we have, because of the renderings that we develop for each of these projects, and some of which I guess do now, knowing from listening to what you said, probably do use an element of VR with the panorama 360 views, have been quite useful to relaying the experience available within the built environment. So
yeah, it's it was kind of a short period of time where I think we all probably started exploring these like crazy because we thought we'd be locked down for a lot longer. So in my opinion, I didn't find it to be a suitable alternative to what we normally do. All of your senses are being used when you're in a space, right? It could be the most beautiful space on earth, but have really noisy neighbors. So what is the experience walking from the parking garage up to the elevator into the space? That's what the tenants' employees are going to experience first thing every day when they arrive. And so that needs to be thoughtful as well. So I think in preliminary evaluations to get maybe a short list, this could be used, especially since you could see a lot of spaces and not have to leave your desk. But considering the size of the investment that organizations are making when selecting a space, you need to be able to touch it, hear it, and smell it. And obviously the software doesn't allow you to do that.
yeah,
Maybe smell-o-vision is being worked on, I'm not sure.
yeah, I don't think we've certainly not ruled out VR. What you just said, that experience, getting the experience from parking your car to your walk to the parking elevators up to the ground floor lobby, maybe transferring to the building elevators and up to your floor. One thing that we are in a privileged position on relative to CIBC Square is for phase 1, 81 Bay Street is nearly complete. We will start occupying that building later this year. And 141 Bay, which has yet to start construction, but has a substantial completion date in late 2024, we will be able to use the phase 1 tower as that sort of VR experience, but in real life. They are mirror images essentially of one another, certainly from a base building infrastructure perspective. So you could, my tours with prospective tenants for 141 will naturally start and sort of perpetuate through 81 Bay Street.
That's way better for sure.
Yeah.
Those are some of the negatives from a tenant perspective. And now from our perspective, someone whose job it is to lease space or for myself, promote a particular type of furniture, we go a long way to create these amazing experiences for our clients on these tours. We want to be able to provide a presentation that's tailored to the client. It's going to cover everything they've identified as important. And And we also want to build a rapport with them so they can get an idea of the people are like at my company or at Ivanhoé, as that's a pretty important piece of the evaluation. So I'm saying this is all bad, but we were forced to use it in the last couple months. One situation for us is we were in a competitive situation for a large project, and the client wasn't able to go to the showrooms. So what we did, unsolicited, is we rendered their entire floor and created a big virtual experience, which was really well received. We also rendered our entire showroom and created a similar walkthrough experience for anyone that we can't host these days. For us, we use CET Configura for our specs, and then we transfer them into Ulio for the walkthrough. For Ulio, you can view it on your PC as you described, where you can kind of drag around with your mouse, or you can use 3D goggles like these ones, where you can drop your phone into the front of this thing, you lock it up, and then as you described, you look like a big dummy while you're trying to look at a space, right? So, I mean, we figured it out just because we had to. It was good because I'm glad we know we're capable of some of these things, but I sure hope that we are not going to depend on these, because it by no means is a replacement for that physical experience. Charlie, is there anything else you want the Six to know about you or Ivanhoé Cambridge and how you're joining the fight against COVID-19?
Yeah, I guess I'd just talk about the response that we have to the global pandemic. I mean, obviously this has caught everyone by surprise, and building owners, there was a point back in late March and early April where, you were waiting for direction from the government, from the powers that be on how to proceed and how to respond to this pandemic. But as building owners, I think we have a responsibility again to enhance our procedures and protocols around the office experience, to focus on the health and safety of the individual occupants in the building. So, whether it's through technology and or amenities, technology is, HVAC and touchless experience and density sensors, CO2 monitors, hands-free light and temperature controls. All of those are things that we are spending a lot of resources researching, and in fact implementing in these new development projects that I've mentioned through our conversation. From amenities, I think amenities need to be better. I think the health and wellness around fitness and bike and bike rooms, showers and change rooms, outdoor space, flex spaces. The co-working world has taken a hit, but they are in, I think, a very privileged position now going forward to offer a flexible solution to leasing. And it's certainly something that we're spending a lot of time looking at and considering for all of our new buildings across North America, is identifying a well-managed flex spaces for our buildings, because in my mind that is an imperative amenity for the magnetic office.
Well, Charlie, thank you for sharing how you and Ivanhoé Cambridge are joining the fight against COVID-19. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Jeff. Nice to see you.
Toronto, you're the best city in the world, and we can't wait for you to feel better again. Yeah, I'm wearing track pants, Charlie. It's okay.
Well, at least you're wearing pants, bro.